Good morning. George Parsons here with Big Top Leadership, continuing our discussion on behavioral styles. If you remember from our last video, we dropped off with the I behavior style and some of the traits of that type of behavior in people. Today we're going to move on to the next letter in DISC, the S. It is one of the most common behavioral styles in the world, and S stands for supportive, soft-hearted. These people are your great team players that are out in the world, out in business, out in schools. People like to work with them. So, what are those 7 prominent characteristics of that S-type behavior? Well, first and foremost, they're steadfast. They're loyal. They're going to stick with you through thick and thin. Next, we just talked about this, but they're a great team player. Words you will hear about an S-type behavior in a team are devoted and committed. They want the team to succeed. Now, for an S, they like consistency. They want things to stay the same. They like that sense of security given to them by structure and routine. They tend to be somebody that will follow the same process each morning as they're getting ready or each day through their work. They're also committed to rendering service. They love to help people. And that's another word that you will hear about that S-type behavior, that they are very helpful. The other thing about an S is they tend to be humble. They don't like to be complimented in public. They don't like to be pointed out. They don't like to be in the spotlight, and they don't like to be the center of attention. They want the focus to be on the team and the people around them. The other thing about that S behavior is they are very committed to people. They may not be the flashy, outgoing type that the I behavior is, but they are also very committed to people, and they come across as very warm. People like to have that S-type behavior as a friend. And when it comes to work, they're very pragmatic. They take a very practical approach to their work and to their projects. They will do things in step-by-step, logical sequences. So, what happens to that S-style behavior when it gets under stress? Well, the greatest fear of the S-type behavior is losing the security of close relationships. They want to feel a part of a team. They want to feel needed. And so if they start to lose that, it's going to create a lot of stress for them. And so an S will normally be seen as very supportive. What happens when they get under stress? Well, supportive moves to being accommodating. One phrase of today that you'll hear S-type behaviors use when they get under stress, when somebody asks them something, they'll say, whatever, I don't care. They want it to go away, and they don't want it to create conflict. What are some other things that you're going to see with that S-type behavior under stress? Well, one, they're going to tend to avoid confrontation. They don't like debates. They don't like arguments. Unlike that I or that D who love to debate and argue, the S doesn't like that. They don't want to be in a situation where there's argument and debate. They'll do whatever they got to do to calm people down or to get out of it. Now, one of the downfalls of an S under stress can be a resistance to change, even when that change is positive. Because if you go back, they like structure. They like things to stay the same. So when you start to create change for them, it can be an issue. I'll give you a great example from my life. I have three daughters. All three have a high S component. We moved them around a number of times through their first 18 years of life. One of the things we learned with them was we couldn't wait till the last minute to talk about moving. The second there was any indication that we may be moving, we were open and we started preparing them for the fact that this change was coming. They had to adapt to it. The S, also under stress, can be reluctant to speak out, especially if they think their opinion disagrees with the vast majority of people around them. They're just not comfortable speaking out. So they're going to hold that opinion to themselves, even though it may be very valuable information to the group that may make them view a situation completely differently. The other thing with an S is they can, under pressure, be overly kind and tolerant. And that fits into they do not want to create a conflict. So they're going to let poor behavior slide. They're going to let things that may move away from their values or what's important to them, they just may let it go. They will just become very tolerant of addressing issues that they should. And the last thing for an S under pressure is they can procrastinate. I apologize for that. Not focusing on getting the task done. They put it off, especially if it's work that they think is going to create some conflict, or it's something that they just are not excited about. They will tend to keep putting it off, especially when you're under pressure. Now, let's talk about, are you an S? What are some traits that you could look for to determine if S is one of your top behavioral types? Do you like to work with people? S people like to work in groups. They don't like to work alone. Now, one of the great things about an S behavior is they're seen as very good listeners. They don't tend to interrupt. They let people get out what they need to say. And they're great at calming upset people. We've talked about this, but do you like things to stay the same? Do you need time to adjust to change? Do you need to, if you were going to move next month, do you need time to adjust to that type of change? The S behavior are seen as generally very easygoing. The S behavior, when they get upset, will hold their emotions in. Now, one thing will happen with them. They'll hold those emotions, and then something can be a trigger. And a term I've used in the past is a gunny sack. That sack gets full, and suddenly everything comes out all at once. Everything that's happened to them for the last 3 months. And trust me, a S behavior will remember things that may have happened 3 years ago that I or D would have long forgot about. The S behavior tends to have long-lasting friendships. They don't tend to have a lot of friends like an I behavior, but the friendships they have are strong and solid. One thing about the S, they're great at short-term planning. I want to point out the short-term planning. We'll talk about where long-term planning comes in with the C behavior, but the S is much better at short-term planning, at bringing people together to resolve an issue right at that point. They tend to be patient and uncomplaining. And again, they try to avoid conflict. They want to maintain peace. Debate, argument makes them very uncomfortable. Now, an S behavior has a slower pace, and that may tend to frustrate people, especially in couples where one of the people has has a much faster pace, an I or D behavior. The other is a slower pace, an S or a C behavior. That slower pace can frustrate that ID behavior. When S behaviors are doing work or working on projects, they are much more comfortable with having someone show them how to do it, giving them guidelines, and then letting them work through it. They don't like to have something dumped on them where you just say, figure it out. S behavior, if you've ever been told people feel comfortable around you, that's S behavior. The other thing unique about an S is if they're in a group of people and nobody is stepping up to be a leader in that group, the S will step up and be a leader. Now, it's not what they want to do first and foremost, but they will do it when it's required and when it's needed. S behaviors do like praise, but it needs to be sincere, one-on-one praise. If you give them false praise, you just blurt something out that they know they really didn't do anything special about, that's worse than no praise at all with an S. Now, as part with being a worker, the S is that worker that you will tend to describe as very dependable. They'll show up to work, they'll do their job, they won't create a lot of conflict around them, they're loyal, they're dependable. And one thing you can do to help an S is understand that they're going to need time to internalize things and time to make decisions. S's are not going to be one where you walk up to them, give them 3 bullets of information and then say, make a decision. That's going to make them very uncomfortable. And they're either going to give you a decision that they're not going to back completely, or if they have the self-confidence, they're going to say, I need more time to think about this. Now, for those people out there that have families, as we have in the last 2 videos, let's talk about what it's like having an S child in the house. Well, we've talked about consistency and structure. With that S child, you want to make your home stable. If your home's not stable and it's got constant conflict and things are continually changing, it's going to create a lot of stress and uncomfort for them. Now, one thing with that S child, they tend to keep their feelings inside. They're going to be that quiet child to the side that's going to be playing with friends, but a small group of friends. One thing you need to encourage them as a parent is to express their feelings. Don't hold that all inside. Now, we've talked about praise with the S behavior. If you have an S child, work with them on setting goals. That will be great. It will help them not put things off and procrastinate. But when they reach those goals, give them sincere, well thought out praise. Don't just do something that doesn't tie into the goals they have achieved. The other thing an S behavior is, as a child, they just need support and assurance that they're okay, the world around them is okay, everything is okay. Now, we're going to talk about this next bullet with both the S and the C behavior because it's important to both of them, but for the S, parents, don't ever make a promise that you can't keep. If you make a promise to an S child, they expect you to keep it. And if you don't, they're going to remember it. You may break a promise to them at 10 years old that will come up in a debate with them when they're a 15-year-old teenager. They remember broken promises. The S behavior is going to tend to ask a lot of questions. They want to know why things work the way people act the way they do, it's important that you take time and answer those questions and legitimize your feelings and thoughts around asking those questions. Just don't blow them off, because those questions are important to them. When you're starting work with that S, make sure you're warm, personal. Don't just make it all about the task. For me personally, that was something I have to work real hard on even today, because I'm about getting the task done. They need to feel the warmth and the work being part of a team. Start with them on helping them make decisions, because that is going to be difficult for them, because they either don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, they don't want to disappoint somebody, so making decisions will be difficult. And parents, resist making decisions for them, because they will let you. They are happy to let you make those decisions. Now, if you're an I or a D parent, watch your tone with that S child. They're very soft-hearted. You can hurt their feelings very easily. I am the CD. We'll talk about the C and the blended behaviors more in future videos, but I can be very blunt, and it was very easy for me to say something without thinking about it, and my tone would just come across and hurt the feelings of that S child. The other thing for that D-type behavior is resist being domineering and demanding with them. Words will matter with them. And lastly, be careful in forcing them to agree with something, because they may not agree with you, but they will agree with you on the surface because they want to avoid conflict. One of the things that will happen here is, as they get older, and if you have forced them as a young child to agree, what they'll do is, as they're with you face to face, they'll agree with you. Then they will walk away and do what they want. So, as we've went through these, have you seen anything that points to you being an S-type behavior, or that S being some component of your behavior? Well, in our next video, we will talk about the C-type behavior. Once we've completed that video, we'll have been through the 4 main types of behavior, and then we will begin to discuss blended type behaviors, a D with a C, a D with an I, an S with a C, and how that impacts the way people will behave. Thank you very much for your time, and again, if you would like further information, please contact us on our website, bigtopleadership.com. Have a good day, and thank you.